Hey there, fight fans. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this episode of Combat Sports Talk. Welcome to Combat Sports Talk, a podcast dedicated to UFC and Bellator discussion, the MMA community, and combat sports in general. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and joining me this week is the man with the keys to victory, John Keys.
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
And coach to the stars, the double champ, George G Money Stalwart.
What up with it?
All right. Well, normally we have just a ton of stuff to talk about. We would normally be talking about, the fights from last night. We would talk about Rob Font versus Jose Aldo at the Apex Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. We'd be looking forward to the pay-per-view this weekend with Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier for the lightweight championship of the world. But tonight is a special night because it's one that I never thought that we would have, at least not so soon. But it's a night that I'm kind of melancholy because we need to sign off. And we'll talk about why we need to sign off. And it's all me. It's not y'all. It's not you. It's me. Why we need to sign off. But at the same time, this month, December 2021 marks the 10-year anniversary of when Combat Sports Talk began. And so 10 years, I've been following the sport. I've been chasing after the stories. I've been talking to people about this sport that I know and love. And it all started back in December of 2011. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But that is the announcement, is that this episode will be the last episode of Combat Sports Talk, at least for the foreseeable future. Maybe things will change and we'll be able to bring this baby back. But for now, I need to step away from the show.
It's okay. We were talking about this in pre-show, and it's just one of those things, man, that, the moment that it stops becoming fun is the time to walk away. And it's time to walk away. It's all right. I've had this, I've been on this show, I've had this run, and I just want to say thank you. From our first conversation all the way to the first time I was on the podcast, I just want to say thank you for including me in all this, and thank you for putting up with my foolery, okay, at all times, and when you thought that it wouldn't work, and I promised you that it would work. I'm glad you had faith to keep the episodes that you thought were like, oh my God, I cannot believe he did this. The one that comes to mind is the walkout music.
Oh man, yeah. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, we can talk about it from both sides, because it was very simple. Because I made the theory that the person with the softest walkout music was the most dangerous. Dangerous person in the ring, and you shouldn't really fight him. And Ryan was getting a little perturbed, and I didn't realize how perturbed Ryan was really getting. And every time that we talk about the person winning, I would ask him, "What was that walkout song?" Okay, and at one point it was like a Celine Dion, and dude just like totally destroyed his opponent. And I proved it. I was like, "Dude, it's Celine Dion. If you're coming out to Titanic, you need to just not fight that person that night, because that is what's controlling him." And the next day he told me he was so mad after we got off that show, but he had to rewatch it the next day and saw that it was absolute genius. And I that one, I was like, well, you just need to trust the flow. Okay.
Yeah,
So, you know,
the funny thing about that episode was that, like you said, I was just getting madder and madder because you kept going back to it and going back to it. So I'm exasperated the whole time, like, not again. And I remember, I told Kalechi, I was like, hey, I'm I I don't know if this is working because this was like the worst show ever, and that was something that was just a thing that happened a lot with when we were with Kalechi, when I was with Kalechi as well. There would be so many episodes where we would have a
oh, dang. Speaking
and
of
there's
devil, he
Kalechi,
shall appear.
yeah,
Okay, good.
and there would be so many episodes where I'd be like, this was a terrible episode, and then I'd wake up the next morning, watch the episode, and it would be hilarious, or it would at least not be as bad, at least not be as bad as I thought it was. And so when I went back and watched this show that we're talking about, I was crying with laughter because you could see how my emotions are escalating every single time, and John would just boom hit that joke again, and I'm like, this is hilarious.
Yeah. Oh man, there is our man, the fourth horseman himself. He is the Tully Blanchard of the Combat Sports Talk. He is the Batista of Evolution. He is KC
I like to think of myself as the busy bone of this group.
There's definitely a pun
goodness.
in there.
Emphasis on bone.
Wait, y'all didn't see that versus? Y'all didn't see the verses with Bone Thugs and Harmony versus Three Six Mafia? They got into a brawl. Okay, Busy Bone had got into a brawl because 3 6 Mafia was making fun of one of the songs that they were making, and Busy Bone stopped the entire show and was like, and they scrapped for like 30 seconds or so, and had to shut down the whole production for like 15 minutes. It was the best stuff ever.
I like to be the troublemaker. What can I say?
Yeah, But yeah, we're just talking about our greatest hits here. As you know, this is
my
this
favorite.
Go right ahead, Casey.
Is Stephen A. Smith.
All right, go ahead and talk about it.
Oh, there's not much to say other than, for some reason, you hate to be called Stephen A. Smith. And there was just one episode where Coach would not let that go. And y'all just kind of went after it for a bit. I've never been more uncomfortable in my life. But
why you got to bring
watching
up
the two
old
of y'all,
stuff, Casey?
I'm just
You know, I
saying,
see this
like,
man
that
on the
has to
regular.
be my favorite.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
the tension.
So
Cut it with a knife.
yeah, so that's funny. I'm gonna tell you how that was. I think episode 137.
Wow, he remembers the episode.
I think it was
Right?
episode 137
He holds
because
grudges.
afterwards I was like, I can't post this. I can't post this episode. We had a conversation. I'm like, I'm not posting this episode. And I think if you go to episode 137, it'll be like, we decided not to post this episode. And so it is in the archives. I do have it. I did not delete it. But it was just one of those where the jokes the jokes just would not stop. I think we might have done a 2-hour show that day. It was a rough one, and I was like,
And
nah, I
an hour
can't
and a half
post it.
of that was just you and Coach going back and forth.
Was that the bad energy one? Was that?
Yeah, that was that's the bad energy episode.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Y'all don't need to see that. That was like I don't know what was wrong with us that night. But it was just the energy.
Might have been the liquor.
Yeah.
See, and there's the
It was the
right
liquor. The drinking game was real that day.
It was real that day.
Yep. I mean, we saw a lot of crazy things go down on this show, man, and we did it, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and I'd like to start kind of at the beginning. Like, this show started because I started watching UFC in earnest back in 2006. And so what happened was, as I'm watching the show, and this is back at the height of George St. Pierre, we had all of the, Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell, that we had that going on. It was a lot of great fights. And I wanted to talk to people about it. And this was at this time I hadn't met Kelechi yet. Well, as I'm leading up to that, like 2006, 2007, 2008, that's when we I think we met in like 2008 or so. But I really didn't have anyone to, something like that. And so I didn't have anyone to talk to about the sport. And it was really, really frustrating because my friends who they were kind of casual fans of it, they would just kind of flake out on me whenever we were going to watch the pay-per-views and things like that. And so I was like, I've got to reach out to a community online. And the only way that I knew how to do that was to start a blog. So in December of 2011, I started Combat Sports Talk, and I wrote a blog about George St. Pierre, because everyone was saying how George St. Pierre was losing it because he wasn't finishing fights. He was winning by decision. And I wrote this long blog. I mean, I stayed up till like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning writing this blog about why we shouldn't be so hard on George St. Pierre. And so I ended up posting it. And as we got into January, I realized how much time and energy it took me to write that blog. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. So the podcast started because I didn't want to write blogs.
Fair enough.
So if you go to Combat Sports Talk episode 1, like, it is just me. It is 13 minutes long, and it's just me reading a script. Now, so Kelechi, I see you doing this. Do I need to take you off camera? Are you giving me the sign?
I forgot. It's been so long since I've been on board.
Yeah, like so. Okay, so I ended up doing the first couple of episodes of the show, which heavily scripted, and so I'm just reading a script because there's no visual, so you just hear me reading it, and you could tell I was reading it. And so I was talking to Kelechi, and I'm like, "Hey, I could use another voice on this show. Would you be interested in doing the co-hosting the show with me?" And so episode 3, Kelechi came in for just like just to give me someone to talk to. And from there, it became me and Kelechi doing the show, so that I had someone to kind of bounce off and do the show with.
So I gotta throw in a timeline on that and say that it has to have been like there was a start and a stop in there where you lost your whole database of shows, right?
Right.
So
yeah. So that preceded the restart with you.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably, I don't know, 20. I don't know the dates on it, but I was doing a show. There was a platform called Spreecast, and it was a beta web streaming service that I was trying to get Combat Sports Talk off the ground. And so there was a guy by the name of Joe Ortel, who was on the radio, ESPN radio up in Walla Walla, Washington. And Sean Barkle, who, Sean, if you're out there listening, shout out to you, because it was you. And then, and then, my homegirl, her name was Crystal Rose out there. She now lives in Dallas. She lives in Dallas now. I'd hope to someday get her on the show, but she was like on our show, and she was providing a female perspective to the sport. And so we would get on and we would do it every week. And we did about 40 episodes before Spreecast lost all our episodes. So at that point, I tried to get on Google Plus and try to do that and try to rebuild the show using Google Plus and Google. I forgot what the name of the streaming service was on Google. But it didn't work. I just didn't have the passion. And then I decided to try to come back and do it again. And that's when this version of Combat Sports Talk started.
So one of my favorite things about this version of Combat Sports Talk is that it came at a time that I needed it, because like what most people have picked up on is I am not a sports guy at all. Like, I don't watch sports like to save my life, but UFC gave me like a reason to be connected with other people, specifically Ryan, and especially going through a hard time in life. Like I just needed that connection into that community. And one of my favorite things about it was like we're both in marketing and like had a voice that we used for marketing that was like still kind of separate from how we talked on Combat Sports Talk. And the first couple of episodes that we did together, we actually did 2 shows a night because the first show was basically us talking like we were marketers and realizing, like, no, we just need to talk and have fun. So we'd re-record the whole episode an hour later and just, like, there was no run sheet. It was just we were talking as friends after we kind of figured out what we needed to talk about during the show. So it was a long run in the beginning. Like, I'm talking about, like, easily 2 to 3 hours just to put out one show, but it took a while to find the voice, and then adding in other people, like it was like that's my favorite part of this is just the kinship that's built and how it's made me it's connected me to you guys, but it's also made me better at my job and how I tell stories more succinctly because like I'm doing now, I can go on for a minute,
Yeah.
but in this format you have to change it up, and I appreciate that about this.
Well, you know, and that kind of brings me to when we met when John Keys joined the show. And John Keys joined the show, I want to say somewhere around episode 48.
49.
Yeah, and so I had moved jobs. Kelechi and I used to work together, and then I had a couple of job opportunities at different places, and I ended up working with John Keys. And so it was, I want to guess and say that I was talking about the podcast to someone, and John, maybe you heard me talking about UFC, and you were like, oh, I love UFC. And we started talking about different things, and I realized that there are people out there whose database of UFC knowledge exceeds my own.
Yeah.
And that was,
you were talking to one dude, and I literally just walked in the room to talk to the same dude, and you were talking about UFC, and I was like, oh, well, I like UFC, and we just started talking. We just started meshing. And, you know, I just explained to him that, you know, I watched UFC from the first one, and I could, you know, I loved and explained the strengths and the weaknesses of the old UFC versus the new ones. And, you know, he just vibed off that, and we just started vibing, talking. And then he brought up the podcast, like, you know, put me on. All right. And, you know, we'll just talk. And, you know, that's what it's always been to me. You know, I've never, you know, it's a show, yes, but it's more of 4 guys getting together talking crazy about stuff that we saw in the mixed martial arts world, and we just comment about it. I mean, I've never really saw it as a show more than just friends getting together talking crazy.
Yeah, well, you know, and it came at a good time because Kelechi was going through different life changes at the time. And so his ability to be on the show as regularly as he had been in the past was starting to change. And so it worked really well that John was like, hey, I'm interested. And so there was, you know, as Kelechi began to, you know, be on the show less and less, John was there to be able to be on the show more and more. And, you know, that's where the hilarity ensued, because it was like, I was treating the show the way that Kelechi and I had done the show, which was very measured and, you know, followed a pattern. And John would be like, oh, I know we're talking about this, but I'm going to pull in anime lore. I'm going to pull in history of pro wrestling. I'm going to even make a reference as though Spider-Man really happened. And it took me a little while to get accustomed to the abstract thinking that John would pull in all of these other pop culture references. And you know one of those examples is the callback show, where he's calling back this one joke over and over again. But there was lots of times where you would hit me with something and I just wouldn't know how to respond, and it would be funny.
So this almost sounds like to me that the time that the Power Rangers pulled out the first three. They pulled out
Nope.
Jason, who was it? Jason, Trini, and Zach, and replaced them with Rocky, Aisha, and who was the Black Ranger? Was it was it
Why you
Adam?
forget the
I think it
Black
was
Ranger?
Adam.
Wait. Was it the
an
Black
Asian
Ranger
Black
because he
Ranger,
was
the
black,
first Asian.
or was he black because he was wearing black?
He was
Like,
black because he was wearing black. The first
but he
Black
wasn't
Ranger
black.
was black, but they switched him out with an Asian, with Johnny Young Bosch. Okay, if you
Okay.
know Johnny, he does a lot. He does a lot of voice work for Funimation. Look him up. He's actually a really cool dude. He lived in Dallas. Funny thing. Almost all of the Power Rangers have lived in Texas or Dallas specifically. Almost all of them.
And that's why he's
The
on the show
amounts
right
of
there.
knowledge
Right.
that this man possesses and holds on to never
Man,
ceases to amaze me.
There you go.
And
Right
yet
there.
I still happen to remember my name in the morning. That's the crazy thing. Yeah, I mean, that's what I bring. That's what I will forever bring. That's what it always should be about. Because I'm looking at the comment section, and I will
I
address.
was about to hop in on those.
Yeah, okay, so Underground Rhino, two things. One, we're not saying we're done. We're just saying, I guess, see you, Space Cowboy. We'll do that.
We need a break.
Yeah, we need a break because
Yeah.
it's just like when we, out of all the stories that we do, there are stories that we don't, and we really go back and forth about what we want and what we don't want, and it's emotionally draining sometimes because we see things in there and we're just like, it's just not right. We feel these stories, okay? What we put out here, we have emotional impact on, believe it or not. All right, and some days it's really good, some days it's strong, just like the whole Johnny Bones Jones situation. We were very, very passionate about that. Okay. Secondly, you asked if are we trying something different? Yeah, we're going to try and live life for a little while. Okay, we're going to try and do what we don't do normally, while we're doing the show, which is usually like sleep or talk to other people, things like that. We're as John Lennon said, life is what happens when we're too busy making other plans. Okay, we're going to do those other plans. All right, and
I've got it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll hop in there on the any tips for people getting ready to make streaming attempts.
Yeah, I'll let y'all.
I'll
go
say
ahead.
that the biggest thing that I found is kind of what I alluded to at the top of my comments here, and that was finding our voice and being able to adapt, right? So, first of all, just feeling what you're comfortable with and just putting yourself out there. It takes a lot of vulnerability because you're going to catch some comments that I'll address here later. But the other side of that is also when you find your voice, not being so stuck in like this is how the show has to be, being able to adapt. And I'd say that in the culture that we're in now, it's super important to have a streaming format that you can interact with your audience because that makes all the difference. Not just for getting views up or growing your audience, but it's a better show when you're interacting and you know what your audience wants. So keep that in mind as you're looking into your viewership or attempting streaming. The other side of this is do not be like me because I read the comments and I get heated. And what people don't understand is it is super easy to find you on the internet. So Bruce Bob Trotter, I need you to hear my voice. You made it too easy to find you. While I was talking, I figured out exactly where you are.
Come on now. Let's choose peace tonight.
Okay. Look, I didn't think I was gonna have to hit this. I didn't think I was gonna have to hit this, but
what you just heard is solely the opinion of the speaker and does not reflect the opinions of anyone else on the Combat Sports Talk podcast or anyone affiliated with this program.
I didn't think I was gonna have to hit that tonight.
Don't take it personally, because I do. Those comments aren't real.
It feels really good not having that pointed at you all the time. All right, I must say,
I got you, John. I got you.
Yeah. So, like I said, Bruce, you're saying that the views seem pretty low, so probably a good idea to pull the plug. Doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Let me tell you something, man. If you do, and Underground Rhino, understand this. If you're doing this solely for attention, you're doing it wrong. Okay.
Agreed.
You will. It is just like it's like dating. Okay, if you go out on a day expecting something to happen, it's never going to happen. Just be natural. If anything, just talk.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's what we do. We just talk. Y'all just happen to be a part of the conversation.
Right. The reason why I did this show was not to someday become Joe Rogan. The reason why I did this show was because I wanted to be able to talk about the sport I love with people that I'm friends with, people that I care about. I mean, and that was been the gift that these three guys have given me week after week for, you know, at least this version of the show has run for like 6 years or so. So it's like, you know, that has been the outlet that I've had to be able to justify going and watching the show and then geeking out about what's going on. That's why we did it. You know, yeah, you know, it'd be great if other people interacted with us and followed us and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is that at the end of the day, we get to talk about it and we get to laugh and joke and spend time together when we're geographically separated across the city and across the country. So, you know, that's why we do this show. And it just so happened that people who do watch it do enjoy it. And, you know, and hopefully that's what you saw over the course of the, you know, these 192 episodes, that you saw that genuine friends got together to talk about a sport that we care about. And I think that that's where George Stallworth comes in, because that was when the great fight between me and Kelechi was happening, and I was training, and I met George, who appears to be sleeping right now. No, there he goes.
Nah, come on, man. Dang.
Yo,
He was looking
No,
down.
I was looking
He
down
had
because
not.
I was getting messages similar to what we're getting here. People were hitting me up saying, "Hey, what's up? The show's going off the air."
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, it was just you had been looking down for a long time, and I didn't know if you were frozen or what. I got you. I feel you. Thank you.
Come
we can.
on.
But
so
no,
Coach, I got to know on this since y'all were training together. Did you know he was a southpaw the whole time?
I refuse to answer that question.
Because I feel like this is deceitful.
so
Ryan lined up in every promo as an orthodox fighter. I step
Yeah.
into the ring and he's a southpaw.
yeah. So yeah. So let's talk about that. So the reason why we got into the fight was because Kelechi wanted to fight in the ticket fight night, and I didn't want to do that. But he was walking around, and so everyone was like, well, the other big black guy in the office is Ryan. So Ryan, if you want to fight Kelechi, and I'm like, no. But what I saw a documentary about Dana White where he was training to fight Tito Ortiz. It was going to be a boxing match. Remember that?
Yeah.
And I got inspired by watching Dana White go back into the gym, start training in preparation to box Tito Ortiz. And I was like, if Dana White can do it, then so can I. So I went up to Kelechi and I'm like, you still want to fight somebody? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. Let's fight. And so we set the date, and I went to Title Boxing and started trying to train. And I got into some of the best shape of my life. I dropped about 50 pounds, and one of the trainers in the gym was George Stallworth. And, you know, I would linger after class to try to talk to somebody about this sport I love, UFC. And the only person who would actually give me time was George Stallworth. And so we began to be friends, and it was like, hey, I do this podcast. You know, I'd love for you to listen to it. Let me know what you think. You know, if you ever had anything that you'd like to, you know, say or anything, maybe I could interview you or something like that. And he was always open to doing it. And so one day it was like, hey, what would you think if we went? And I don't remember. He might have been his idea. I'll give you credit for it. He's like, why don't we do a live broadcast during a fight? And I'm like, yeah, let's give it a shot. So I packed up all my equipment, and we went to, at the time it was, what was it, Austin Avenue first?
It was Austin Avenue. Yeah.
And so we would go to Austin Avenue, and we set up the equipment, and we would do a live broadcast during the show. during the fights, and it was just me and George. And so the only time that George appeared on the show was just for pay-per-views where we were doing live broadcasts. So John and I, or John and Kalechi and I, we would do the show week to week, and then George would only appear for pay-per-views. And then after a while, it's like, it is so fun to hear somebody who, and if you ever watch this fight with George, it's crazy because he'll be like, doing the analysis of the fight as it's going on. And as he's saying, well, the fighter needs to do this, you would hear the commentator go, well, the fighter needs to do this. And it was like, that's what George just said. And we never had that level of expertise on the show. And so I'm like, George, I got to get you actually on the show so you can break down what these fighters are doing, like how they're using the center line, how they're using footwork, how they're using combos. I want you on the show to talk about that. And so George made that leap over from the pay-per-view side, where we were only doing live shows for pay-per-views, to being a regular, host on this show.
You know what's crazy about that is the level of knowledge that Coach brings to the sport, and yet you still got beat. I'm talking about Ryan, not Coach. Hold on. Let me clarify that.
Whoa, no.
I'm talking about Ryan.
What
How
you
you have
just
Coach
heard
in your
is
corner
solely
and
the
still
opinion
get
of the speaker and does not reflect the opinions of anyone else on the call.
Hey, that's why KC is over there getting banned from CSA gym forums and stuff on Instagram.
Let me be
What
clear.
was that about,
CSA
man?
Gym,
What
I
did
got
you
love for y'all,
do?
but this blocking stuff, come on.
Coach
Man,
Kirian,
what?
the views expressed by this gentleman over here are not George's.
So yeah, what happened? What happened with that, man? I mean, come
We'll get
on,
into
you
that
got
at
still.
another point.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
but yeah, so that's how we became the fearsome foursome here. Is Kalechi was the kind of the second voice on the show. John Keys brought the knowledge and the experience of having watched and followed UFC since number one, and all the pop culture references that he has somehow indexed in his brain. And then George brought the expertise of being a coach and being, a fighter to the show, and we became Combat Sports Talk. And so for that, I am grateful to all of you for your contributions that you made to make this show more than just one voice talking into the void. Thank you for that.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you. Thank all of y'all. Actually, the fans and the haters.
Yeah.
Y'all kept
No,
up.
don't take the haters, because I'll fight you.
But we know
Laugh, okay.
all the haters need to do is show up as an orthodox and then switch stances in mid fight. That's all they got to do.
Bam. Look, I've learned that lesson, and I will fight any southpaw all day, every day.
So I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the fact that we also made it through the whole summer of 2020. We made it through the discussions, those tough discussions about George Floyd's murder, what it means to be black in America, and I think that was something that was a poignant moment that we uniquely could have that perspective as four black men on this show that other podcasts couldn't speak to the way we did. And it meant a lot to me that we decided that we would change our regularly scheduled program to make that show about our feelings, to let it be as raw as possible, to talk about something that was going on not in the sport but in our society and in our nation and around the world. And that required a lot of vulnerability and trust. And for that, I also want to say thank you that you were allowed me to let your views be heard on this show, that this became a platform for us to talk about those things.
So that the George Floyd episode will hands down be my favorite episode for so many reasons. One is that it started off so rough. Like, we all had a different perspective on how we wanted to have that conversation. But at the end of the day, it opened up a platform for us to just share openly and in unexpected ways and have some provocative thoughts that weren't just provocative for the sake of it, but really opened up some in-depth conversation and nuance that needed to be there. The other side of this is, as the non-sports guy on the show, like I feel like the biggest thing that I can bring is heart and passion around this. So for me, one of the things that Ryan has loved most about combat sports is the story behind the fighter, right? Like all of the things that they're bringing into the ring. And I think over the years that has kind of rubbed off on me. And so I start to see that the fight isn't just in the octagon, it's everything that we have around us. So when we talk about the vulnerability that it took to have this conversation, to me, it was just an extension of kind of the before the fight stories, right? Like we all have our own fights that we're going through in life. And this was a moment for us to kind of shed a little light on what happens outside of just this moment, but what it just is to walk through life and have these tensions and vulnerabilities that we have to have that resilience that maybe some don't understand on a day-to-day basis. So for all the work that I do in diversity, equity, and inclusion, for all the work that I do on shame and resilience, like I think in that moment, it allowed us to show that every man has to have that mix of tough and tender. Like that is a balanced life. And so for as much as we can talk about combat sports and as much as we can all get in the gym and be training, there's also that aspect of our life that it was unique for us to be able to put that on this platform.
Amen. If anything, that episode gave me the ability to fight. It renewed my energy to fight the good fight. To educate my universe, because we all have our universe. If we affect one person in our universe, we've done our job. So I made it a point to educate everybody from my experience, because I've seen, being here I coming from Kentucky opened up my eyes to how people act there compared to how people act here in Dallas. Okay. And it's a totally different mindset. And I say that and I stand on it just because I've seen it. Okay. I understand it. So when, we had that episode, all it did was just reinvigorate me to have people not to force my opinion onto people, but to just present the information, take what you will from it, and just open your mind to see maybe there's something different going on that I'm not aware of. And if I did that, I know that if I affect one person out of my entire universe, I know I've done my job. And that's what I took from that episode, was to take what we had that night and continue it on, and to educate people, to say, look, you may have lived in this bubble, but this is what's going on outside of it. And this is what I know. These are my experiences. Let me tell you how it made me feel. Because you're so far away from it that it doesn't affect you. The things that you say doesn't affect you, or that's bad. Oh my God, it's affecting me. I'm right there. I'm in the trenches with it. And
Ryan,
that's what I do.
Ryan, do you mind if I pivot real quick?
Sure. Oh.
All right. So when we talk about fighting in the trenches and then like how that translates to our normal life, can we talk about the time that Ryan put my life at risk because I actually train with MMA fighters periodically? Like, so now that I'm at Easton, training over where, who is that? Usman and all those folks train at Easton. But before that, I was at Factory X, and Anthony Smith would regularly show up.
Drink.
And so, was it at that point that Ryan, you tweeted or Instagram?
Yeah. It was Instagram.
Smith, right?
Yeah. I think you had posted a photo of you taking like one of the team picture.
Yeah.
At Factory X. I think you had posted that you were in the team picture, and I posted it. I posted the you had posted the picture, and so I messaged Anthony Smith and said, "You see that guy over there, Kelechi? He said he could take you," and so,
bruh, when
I,
I walked into the gym, like he waited till after my training session, walks up to me. He was like, "Oh, so you think you could take me?" My heart dropped like never in my life. I thought I was going to be deceased on that day, like because I had just seen him roll with 3 black belt jujitsu guys, and then he
yeah.
pops up, walks over to me, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm dead. Like I'm gonna die."
Yeah, it was super funny because it was just a oh, I'm gonna be funny. I did not think that Anthony Smith would actually respond, but when he liked the post, Kalechi's like, I got a message from Kalechi and it was like, "What did you just do?" That's all it said.
Bro, Anthony Smith, like he cuts to 205, right? So we are the same size in that gym at that point. Like I think I was walking in at around 230. Anthony Smith easily has 4 inches on me. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna die today. Like this man is thick.
Yeah. So that was funny, and so it was always kind of a running joke that well, look, you want to talk smack, Kalechi? Don't make me message Anthony Smith. Don't make me message another Factory X fighter. That was really funny. And we had those moments. We have so many funny moments that I wish that we had the bandwidth to kind of put like a best of show together, just so that people could see how many times we just found that comic thread and we just pulled that thread, and next thing you know, it's like, this is what makes this show great, is the comedy. I mean, we do the analysis and we do we do the commentary, we do the headlines and all that kind of stuff, and I think that we're really good at it. But when we strike that balance between what's going on in the sport and then the comedy that we can see in that sport, I think that I think was the sweet spot for the show.
Yeah.
I would like to also take this moment to officially call out Usman's brother. The end.
Oh.
Wait, what?
What?
Have y'all seen
No.
Usman's brother?
We're gonna look at him now. Hold on.
Wait, his brother is bigger though, right? His brother's even bigger. So why would you call him out?
Make a call out. I'm calling out somebody in my weight class. I'm not gonna pull a Conor McGregor.
I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing, and I'm gonna do this bit just for Johnny Hearns. I know why you're calling out Usman's brother, because you want to call out the not as good sibling.
This is like calling out Shevchenko.
This is calling Antonina.
You're being set up again is what's happening right now.
Calling out Antonina.
This is about to turn into another Anthony Smith moment.
Yeah.
He's 7-2, man.
Kalechi's quick to call out Antonina. He ain't gonna call out Valentina. Like, he gonna call out what Usman's brother is. What's his name? Muhammad. It's like Muhammad Usman, right? Yeah. And so it's like, I'm gonna call out Muhammad. Not gonna call out Kamaru. No, we're not doing this.
Usman I might actually run into. Like, if I see Kamaru, like, I'm gonna pretend like this conversation never happened.
You'll be like, Kamaru will be like, "Oh, you call out my brother?" You were like, "No, man, this was just a."
This is your culture love.
Look, Naja, you know the carry lie. This is your cultural awareness moments.
Oh man!
Oh my goodness! Oh.
Yeah, I tell you what, we started doing this show, and I only had like one drop, and it was, or I had 2 drops, because whenever the fight there would be a brutal knockout, I'd play a little bit of Sarah McLachlan, and then Kalechi had a catchphrase that he coined during the show that he would never use, so I made a drop for Kalechi because he would never use his catchphrase. So
Boom! Rocked him.
yeah, so I had to. So I would actually cue him to say it by hitting the.
Still would always forget. Still would always forget.
But that's the crazy thing, because ironically, both of those could have been used last night. It was pretty brutal. I will say this about last night, just to pivot a little. All right, that Keith Peterson, we got beef. Okay, you let Clay Guida win that fight because dude was beating on this dude on Santos was beating on Clay Guida like I would beat on a drum. Okay, and Santos looked at Peterson twice, and Peterson was still looking at the mat like,
If he
and
dies,
that was
he
it.
dies.
Yeah, I mean, there was over 30 unanswered shots. You know better, Keith Peterson. Okay, we know what you did. We know what you did. That's all I gotta say about it.
So I want to go back to you, George. So if you think back to your memories on the show, what's one of your favorite memories on the show?
The feud between you and John over the video games
Oh,
that never got played.
Oh, it did. It did. Wait, you didn't.
No,
Oh, look
apparently
at.
every time that it was about to go
Oh,
down, you had issues with your controller, or the game didn't work
yeah, yeah.
right, or
yeah.
But we
um,
did play.
somebody
We did
was
finally
sick
fight.
and couldn't show up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
we
we
so
did fight.
yeah, so
Okay.
let's go back. In one of the random things that we were talking about,
Yeah.
John Keys made a reference to Street Fighter 2. And so
Challenged you to.
so many times, John Keys makes references and I don't get them. But he made a reference to Street Fighter 2 and I was like, "Oh, so, John Keys, which fighter do you use?" And he's like, "I use Vega." And I'm like, "Vega?" So I started talking mad crap about Vega. I'm like, if we played, I would have Chun-Li, I would take you out. And so this became a bit. And we would just go back and forth about when we're gonna fight. So finally we were like, okay, we're gonna fight. And what let's give you full screen.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. There you go.
I like
Pretty
how
much
you
how
had
it
to
went down, ladies and
inch it
gentlemen.
in there
I
too.
was kind of hoping it was such a grudge that you actually kept the video footage.
Yeah, so we
We
actually did have, there is video. It is on the Combat Sports Talk YouTube page. Where we actually played a match and John finally won his first. So he's 1-6.
Oh,
1-6 versus me.
I think I beat you in 7 games that day. Okay, we had a whole crowd of people
We
behind
did.
us, egging us on as if
We
we were in
did.
the arcade.
We
And
did,
it
but
was, I
e-
think I let him have one. Just to make sure.
every one of those other forfeits though, those counts as wins for me because as George was pointing out, that at first you told me you were going to show up with your equipment and then you didn't, and then it was
Yeah,
like,
that's
oh, I called that as a win. And then there was the time
Okay.
that you did show up with your equipment, but you didn't tell me that you showed up with your equipment. There was the time that you told me you showed up with the equipment and we went downstairs but we couldn't get it to work.
Yeah, that was that. That was a malfunction. That was a
Then
malfunction.
there was the
But
one you're
in
supposed
Alex's
to.
defense, you take a win over anything. Like you might have
I
actually had the
know.
loss, but you'll claim it as a win.
Yeah,
Listen,
exactly.
a win is a win. Then you committed. You were like, okay, I couldn't get it to work here. There's a pay-per-view this weekend, and I remember the pay-per-view because it was the one where Israel Adesanya fought Derek Brunson. You're supposed to show up for that, and that's when you didn't show up for it because you dang near lost a toe.
Yeah, oh, that was the staph infection. Yeah,
You had a
Ladies
staph
and gentlemen, I had
infection.
a staph infection. He took that as a win. I'm like,
Nope.
dude, staph. Okay.
Well, because you were
became 9 toes. Okay.
you were so upset that you couldn't get the equipment to work when we had agreed that we were going to do it, that you were like, listen, if I don't show up on Saturday, you can just call it a win.
I told you you are in jail or hospital, done. I ended up in the hospital.
You didn't make any kind of caveat. No, you did not make any kind of caveat, and that was where that was where it was like, yeah. So I counted that as a win. So that was really what would happen, and then finally we got it all set up, everything, and then we had the fight head to head, and
the brakes off of him, ladies and gentlemen.
I feel like that doesn't count because all of that is basically fighting Thug Rose before the hair chop. So now he's in his next form. He is short hair Thug Rose. You're not ready for that action, boss.
Man.
This is like
Well,
Bronson with black hair versus Bronson with blonde hair. So
now
he's
that the
in
show,
fine form.
now that the show is kind of coming to an end, maybe we can finally have that final battle. At Play It Again or whatever it's called. The what's it called in Richardson? The arcade.
Yeah. Oh, I can't remember what, but I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
But,
It's
we gotta do it before Omicron shows up and rushes over to Metroplex.
So we can finally do it there.
Is that a thing?
No, it's I forgot what it's called. It's not Play It Again.
I'm looking it up right now.
Discovery
But anyway.
Zone.
Free play.
Free play. It's an arcade in Richardson, and John challenged me to go and play him there, where it's an actual arcade. Because my complaint on the loss is that there were glitches that inhibited. There were glitches. You can see it on the screen.
My foot was a balloon. Oh, Conor McGregor looking.
Yeah. You see, John Keys. It was a doctor stoppage. You did not beat me. It was a doctor stoppage. Your wife was in my DMs.
That needs to be the drop right there.
Oh my god.
So we're gonna have to find the final battle, the battle to end it all. Chun-Li versus Vega at Free Play. That's what we'll have to do.
We got to.
Once again, I just want to express my gratitude to those of you who are out there, who are watching, who supported this show over all this time. It's been. I want to end with what has kept me going for so long. It has been really funny that every time that I have looked to stop doing this show because of whatever reason, I've gotten depressed. I've gotten just starting to question whether or not it's all worth it. Whether it be God, providence, or the universe has saw fit to remind me that people do care. I was having a conversation with Kalechi, and I was like, I haven't been posting. I just don't think that anyone's really listening. And that same day, I got an email from a guy in Arizona, Mike Oruk, who was like, "Hey, Ryan, I haven't seen any Combat Sports Talks posted in a while. Are y'all still doing the show?" It was the same day that I told Kalechi that I didn't think anyone was listening, and there was. And it rejuvenated me, and it was like, "Hey, man, I need to. We got to keep going. I got to find a way to keep going." Then, a year, maybe 2 years later, I had another one of those moments where it was like, I don't know if this is it, and it just so happened that after I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna do this show anymore, we find out that we were one of the top 25 podcasts, for 2021. And it was like, wow, there's actually people covering our show. And then even as late as this past week, or last week, George and I were sitting at a bar, and George introduced me to someone, and he's like, "Gosh, I feel like I know you." And I'm like, "Really? Where do you know me?" And he's like, "Your voice. You do the podcast." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm sitting here face to face with an actual fan of the show." And so, to kind of go back to, what Bruce Bobtrotter was saying is that, it doesn't seem like the show is going anywhere. No, people actually listen to the show and care about the show. Like, hell, Your Tale comes on this show every single week. So, I don't know what to tell you.
You can come see me.
So, but people do care about the show. And so I want to send a shout out to everyone who listens to the show, and as well as you too, Sonia Gutierrez, because
Sonia, this is my virtual hug, because I feel like you are like an
you
A1
have been here, A1 from day one, long time fan, first time caller kind of thing. Even came to see us whenever we were doing live shows. You know, you have always been a fan there, and so I want to send you a thank you as well, because it's people like you that make it possible to keep doing this show. Unfortunately, there are needs that I have to attend to personally that make this show really hard to do, because you have to keep watching the fights. You have to stay on top of the stories. You have to keep doing this show and producing and creating content. And it's just not something that I can sustain. It's not sustainable right now. And so it's not because of any feeling that there aren't fans out there who want to see what we have to say or hear what we have to say. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's really, like I said at the top of the show, it's me, it's not you. And so with that, let's take some parting words and let's call it.
Okay. This is
So,
not this is not farewell. Like I said before, this is not farewell. This is see you, Space Cowboy. We'll be back.
All right. Whoops. There you go. Okay. All right. We'll go back. All right. Oh man, we're gonna get serenaded. So I'll go to you. I'll go to you last, Kelechi. You sing us out. George, you got anything you want to say to the fans out there?
Nothing particularly, but you know how as black people we go to certain funerals and you got that one family member. They can't believe that person is gone, and they damn near want to jump in the casket with them and just. That's how I'm feeling right now, bro. This is very surreal for me. I've voiced to you before. I'm not a fan of this decision. I totally respect your decision. But I kind of like John. I'm looking forward to us returning at some point, and I get the feeling we will be back and better than ever.
All right, thank you so much, Kelechi.
Now I was gonna sing a little "Boys to Men" for you.
Oh.
Now your father. Yeah,
Oh.
Look,
Lord.
I have absolutely no profound words. All I can say is that there is a deep and abiding appreciation for the viewers, except for the haters, because I still will fight you. I also do have to say, though, to George's point, like, this isn't ending a pause for where we are now, but that doesn't mean that that any of us are going away in any official capacity. So, I mean, still hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. Have those conversations. I think those relationships have mattered very deeply, even outside of just the comments here. There's been many people that, as you have said, has continued to spur us on, and whether it's through Combat Sports Talk or just a side conversation, I think these are meaningful conversations, and they continue to put us in good spots to interact with a thing that's brought us together. So, like the fighter interviews that George has access to, the level of knowledge that John brings, all of that still remains, right? So. In another context, another form, I say just keep your eyes out and stay in touch, because this format is taking a pause, but we're all still here.
All right.
Well said.
Okay. Well, I've kind of said my piece. The big thing for me is that I appreciate. There you go. I guess. I appreciate everyone, because this show may have been an individual's idea, but it definitely didn't come to life without a whole bunch of people who cared a whole lot. And so, to you, George and John and Kelechi, thank you so much for being inspiration to me, for pushing me, for being here for me, for tolerating me, for all of those things that y'all have done, being a role model for me. Thank you. I would love to see this show come back bigger, better than ever. I just don't know when that would be. And so, I felt like, rather than keep trying to do this in spite of everything else going on. I felt like it would be the best decision to go ahead and call it. But, this gives us an opportunity to look at the show, to retool, to rebuild. And if the timing is right, come back. And I would love to have you all back on the show again, and we pick up where we left off.
Just one thing to remember, Ryan, and we'll sign off. When you look at the numbers of people that have viewed our show, I want you to remember one thing, that yes, all three of us, all four of us were here. But remember, this is your foundation. This was your foundation. Okay? We wouldn't have touched all these people if it hadn't been for you.
Phrasing.
Remember that.
For the record, I touched no one.
Now sign us off here before you see four black men cry.
All right. I don't want to see that, because we some ugly criers, I bet.
Yeah, we are.
All right. Well, that's it. That's the show for now. We are signing off. It's been a hell of a ride. There's been a lot of great fights, and like Kelechi said, we will still be on social media, so you can still hit me up. There's my Twitter information right there, my Instagram information right there. We'll still be talking about it. So for the Intelligent Defense Discussion Group, that's not dead. We'll keep posting there. So conversations to continue. It's just being able to do this show will need to cease for the time being. So with that, on behalf of George G Money Stallworth, John Keys, Kelechi, KC Onyebuchi, my name is Ryan Smith, reminding you to always keep your hands up, your chin tucked, and throw bombs. We'll see you when we see you.